to what Ruto promised and what he's saying, borrowing has gone up instead of coming down. But strangely, the cash crunch continues. In September 2022, when Uhuru Kenyatta officially handed over to Ruto, Kenya's total debt was 8.701 trillion. I repeat, 8.701 trillion. Of this, 4.33 trillion was external debt, while 4.366 was domestic debt. As at March 2023, that is in 6 months after Ruto took over, Kenya's debt rose from 8.701 trillion to 9.390 trillion. Our debt rose by 689 billion shillings in 6 months under Ruto. 689. External debt, which stood at 4.33 trillion in September of 2022, rose to Kenya shillings 4.851 trillion in March this year. Domestic debt rose from 4.36 trillion in September 2022 to 4.539 in March 2023. We can go further back to the year 2021. Between September 2021 to March 2022, that a comparable period, our debt rose by 405 billion, from 7.96 trillion to 8.401 trillion. External debt was at 4.209 trillion, while domestic debt stood at 4.192 trillion. This was the time Kenya was struggling with the impacts of COVID-19, including implementation of subsidies and the emerging war in Ukraine. But our total debt was still lower than what Ruto has incurred in 6 months' time. Kenya Kwanza has borrowed more than any other regime. They have removed subsidies, raised taxes, but the cash crunch has continued. They cannot pay salaries. They cannot disburse money to schools. They cannot disburse money to counties. They cannot disburse money to the elderly. They cannot finance the National Hospital Insurance Fund. And nearly all major infrastructure projects have stalled. Where is the money going? It is being stolen and being spent on wrong priorities to massage Ruto's ego. And that is not all. Quietly, Ruto is trying to change the country's debt ceiling from the current absolute number of Kenya shilling 10 trillion to a moving number of 55% of GDP. And right now they are trying to bring an amendment in Parliament that will remove the parliamentary authority to sanction increase of debt. The debt level is already 60% of the GDP. To beat that violation of the law, Ruto wants to force an amendment to the Public Finance Act to allow the National Treasury and not Parliament to set new debt ceiling.